Greetings, everyone. This is Chief Yuya, and I'm here to bring you a very important announcement for all of you Blog Talk Radio listeners, especially those of you who enjoy dialing in live and communicating with the Our New family via this medium. As of December 1st, the call-in number will be changing. Due to changes at Blog Talk Radio, we have been given a new dial-in number for all of our listening audience. That new number is 515-605-9862. Again, 515-605-9862. That new number will be active as of December 1st. So I would ask that you all lock it into your phones and into your contacts list so that you will not miss out on any of the enlightenment and transformation programming. Okay, one love to you all. Welcome, everyone, and welcome all of our archive people. Welcome all of our new listeners, and of course, welcome all of you loyal and consistent live listeners, those of you tuning in from Blog Talk Radio, and of course, those of you also tuning in from YouTube right now. I want to welcome you to Enlightenment and Transformation. And this segment that you're listening to right now is Chief Speaks. And I am Chief Yuya, the Chief Jegna of the Anu Life Global Ministries and the head instructor of the Sadulu House Spiritual Institute. I want to thank all of you for riding with us this year. I know it's been a bit different. You know, this year has been this Gregorian year. You know, I always try to make that distinction because my new year doesn't really kick into around June. But I do acknowledge that the Gregorian year is a time that people lock themselves into or attach themselves to, rather. And we're in the last month of it, December. And with this month, we're dealing with the topic of living the culture. Now, I know in our newsletter, we specified accountability was this month's topic. And that was a mistake. So this month's topic is actually living the culture, okay? And our last month was of course forgiveness and resentment, you know. And as always, we did the end of the month show, and students called in, and they did an excellent job at really just dealing with different concepts surrounding forgiveness and resentment, and of course, as always, giving a different perspective and a different angle, and that's always necessary. And each person who speaks and each person who lends their voice to the work, they give that varied and different way that we can look at the different concepts presented. So that's always a beautiful thing when that happens. You know, I'm going to share this month's insights with you all so that kind of can just get caught up, especially those of you who are coming in new. You know, a 12-month period goes by so quickly, especially now after the shift. There's been not only a shift in consciousness, but if there's a shift in human consciousness, that there's always going to be a shift in the human time continuum. So what a second was 20 years ago is no longer a second today. Seconds are even different. You know, that the time transgression of what we consider to be 1 second has changed. You know, so 12 months goes by very quickly now. Now 12 months feels like 6 or 7 months. You know, things have sped up quite a bit. And of course, the Gregorian year of 2016, there were a lot of very interesting things that happened. A lot of strong and beautiful people transitioned, and there were definitely some changing moments for the guards. You know, where the guards took different positions in different places, and some old energies kind of transitioned out. And of course, we saw the rise of certain new paradigms and dynasties. But I'm going to go through real quick, share with you all what we've touched on. So if you missed some of the earlier shows, you'll know where to pick up at. And January, we dealt with success and progress. February, we dealt with humility. March, we dealt with acceptance. April, we dealt with race first. May, the key to an Anu life / African life. June, we dealt with new gods versus old gods. July was liberation and freedom. August was unity. September was family. October, the magician. November, forgiveness and resentment. And of course, that leads us now to December, which is living the culture. So if you see, obviously there's a track. Like I said, there's always a method to the manliness, but there's a track and there's an intention. Each month, represents a certain vital energy. It's always important to know that, even by name of month. Of course, you had your Caesarean energies come in and start to mess around with the months, like in July and August, for Julius and Augustus. So it kind of threw things off a bit, but especially in those earlier months, the January, February, March, those were always times, because to be clear, that 12-month calendar didn't begin in Greece. Okay, so even in ancient Kemet, as well as in ancient Ethiopian structure, or really Punt structure, Indus structure, there was a 12-month calendar. There were many different calendars. In Kemetic structure, you had a 12-month calendar. You even had a 10-month calendar. You had even more after that. There were a lot of calendars. So that's why it's always tricky when one says, oh, the Mayan calendar or the Hopi calendars and Hopi prophecies, because most indigenous cultures function off of several calendars, especially those some calendars are specific to harvesting, and then other calendars are specific to moon times and so forth and so on, as well as some calendars are temple calendars, and they deal with what happens during certain months. For instance, like February, we dealt with humility. Well, one of the reasons I worked with humility in February, because Febraris, February actually means to purify or to cleanse. So February was always a month that was utilized spiritually in different temples throughout the world to put people through, or to go through purification rites. And humiliation is a form of purification, and each month has a reason behind it in that sense. July, liberation and freedom, and August, unity, dealing with that solstice time. And now we're combining and conjoining within that first eye reality. I'll go through some of the method. I'll probably do that in 2017 and I'll look back, so you'll understand a little bit more that, I didn't just pick concepts out of a hat and say, what haven't I spoken on? So, we're really creating a whole individual and a whole being with this course of study that we call Anu. And if you go through the archives, there's so many shows. Just in this year alone, you have an extra 50 shows or so to add on to the 400 and change that we already had. So, we're approaching, and now with the community show, which is an even longer show, it's a 2-hour show running twice a strong. We're probably, in the 600s or beyond at this point in terms of the amount of shows. So, we have everything that you could possibly want to tap into in our new archives. And 2017 is going to get even grittier, So we got a lot here. Like I said, we're dealing with success and progress, humility, acceptance, race first, the key to our new life, new gods versus old gods, liberation and freedom, unity, family, the magician, for forgiveness and resentment, and living the culture. We got it all kind of covered. We got beans, greens, potatoes, tomatoes, lambs, rams, hogs, dogs, chickens, turkeys, rabbits, you name it. I was joking on that, but we got a lot here that we've covered. and it's going to get even deeper. So I definitely appreciate those of you who've been riding and who have been changing. We've been getting a lot of reports about just the growth that people have been undergoing. Even some who are not even in the class yet. And of course, when you join the class, it kicks it up to another notch. But just in riding with the ministry, there's been a lot of growth and change, and that's wonderful. I personally, not that it's even about me, because it's not, but I personally couldn't really ask for much more. So I just want to express my personal gratitude and thankfulness, not so much to you, but to your Egun and to your Egbe and the spirits that work with you and guard you and guide you and orchestrate you through certain experiences. Those of you who were able to hold on, we've lost a lot of people if we look nationally and locally. But even in this movement of Anu, so many have come and gone, and that's just the nature of a powerful and ground-breaking movement. You're gonna lose people. You're gonna gain people through the excitement and the momentum at first, but when you're doing something that's groundbreaking and that's pioneering, in many ways and in many forms and fashions, it gives people an opportunity to really determine if this is really what they want to do. And a lot of times they find that it's not. It's more than they were really looking for. They bit off more than they can chew, and that's fine too. Whatever step, just step it up. However you approach the altar. If you were on step 1 and you rode with Anu for a year and you got to step 3, okay, that's fine. Even if there's 20 steps, okay, well, you got somewhere. You're moving somewhere. Everyone is going to fall into a different space, and water seeks out its own level. So this movement is a movement for the master thinkers, those who are really looking to affect change and not just looking to pacify and placate the dysfunction that already lies within them, but really looks to root it out so that they can become people of renown, respect, and people of good report. So that takes work. You're not going to be able to do that casually. It's not going to be something, especially because of what this society has done to all of us, which is the real tragedy. But it's not a casual thing. And sometimes when individuals find that out, it's a little difficult for them. And, I bring this up because, of course, this month's show is about living the culture. And ultimately, that's what needs to happen. It's not just enough to have a book, bookshelves full of books, or digital reading devices full of a bunch of pirated PDF downloads of different books and things like that. It comes a point where you have to really face the unrealized principles and values that are still lingering around you. Your individual values, your communal values, and really look and see, well, what have I not realized? What have I not translated and transcribed into my walking and living life? Because if I'm not really living by those values, then in fact, what am I using to drive myself? What am I using to really map out my reality? Or what am I using to supply my life with meaning and to supply my life with purpose and depth, and to determine what my identity is in the world? You might find that you can collect mountains and mountains of conscious information, but until you really take the skill sets that you've been acquiring through your study and apply them to your life, seeing the real value in them, for the most part, until you do that, you're pretty much running on autopilot. And that's a dangerous thing, because autopilot in a darn near dystopian society such as what we live in practically leads one, it's just about training. It's almost like Pavlov's theory with the dog. We ring a bell, the dog knows it's time to eat. So it becomes like that, and we lose a strong sense of ourselves and a strong sense of who and what supports us. We get caught up in the values of our societies that are not ours, the values that our colleagues impute to us, of our spouses that don't mean anything to us. We lose our proper sense of value when we don't live our culture, and sometimes judging our values and our culture by a society, an external barometer, it causes us to kind of feel like, well, what we're learning is unquantifiable. So I really can't put a value on it. I really don't know if it works, and mainly because if I'm not living my culture, I never get to experience my culture in conflict. And that's where you really kind of get to pull out the fundamental purpose and the real conscious behaviors that are then generated and created from living your culture. You see, so your identity becomes important in that moment, and really, again, like I said, living the value, because when you start to live the value or live the culture, and it has to connect with your daily reality, then you'll find what aspects of your daily reality are in conflict with the preserved and higher asset-based culture that you've developed for yourself. If you feel no pushback, and if the culture that you're living is making your enemy or your oppressor comfortable, then there's a problem. So that's an important thing to keep in mind, that a lot of times we're really looking to include ourselves and to be included amongst the generation and the social teams that seem to be doing so much better than us. And we sometimes express through our behavior, or we express through our conduct, how lowly we look at our own culture, or what we consider to be our culture. Our culture stays within a closet. It's unlived. And from an ethical perspective, obviously, that's wrong. We're not really putting the proper priority, prioritizing our culture. And our culture and how we value it represents how we create an estimation of our own truth. So that's why it's easy for one to say, well, this is your truth and this is my truth and that's their truth. That's a way of undermining the truth. There is an absolute and primal truth. There is. And then there are off branches of that, and the further we get away from that, then the more duality becomes our means of clarification, through contrast. Well, it could be this or it could be that. And that becomes our duality. But again, like I said, the culture that we represent and we live, that represents the estimation of the truths that we attest to and we hold dear. So you can tell what someone really stands on and aligns themselves with in terms of their values and their purpose, based on the values that you see them express. That tells you what they really think of it. So one may say something like, okay, I know Columbus didn't discover America, right? But then maybe every year they celebrate Columbus Day. So it gives you an idea of how they have estimated the value of their truth. You see, truth may not be very popular to them. Truth may not be really a priority in their life. Inclusion may be a greater priority. But when we begin to live our culture, we start to elicit the our essential priority list. And, we get to ask ourselves, so what is really important in this life? Not only based on my culture, but based on how my culture is currently interacting with life. What is truly important, what's not important. And then when you get to that place, you find that you're not wasting your energy units anymore. You're not being distracted by things that do not fulfill the deeper measure of your purpose. You begin to actively engage and bond with people who are congruent with your cultural values, your ancestral principles. And in truth, by doing that, you'll start to generate more pleasant or positive, as some like to say, and more supportive notions of the energies that are around you. When you live the culture, and you remove that dissonance from your mind. So there are so many truths that have been shared from January 2016 to November 2016, right? There's been a lot of shows done between the various shows that we do. There's been a lot done. There's been a book released, The 14 Keys, of course. And, that book is vital. That book is vital, because it really gets into the cultural values. What are the values of our culture? It's the 14 keys. Whose are? Anu. Okay, it's about the Anu. I don't strive to appraise or evaluate anyone else's culture, because it is not my place to do that. It's inappropriate, you see. And that's one of the things that living the culture, we have to start to really respect. We have to really start to dig into, and that's the etiquette that we exhibit when we're functioning and interacting with people of varied cultures. I've had enough experience through social media in this Gregorian year to encourage me to pull back even further. So many incidents of individuals speaking out of turn, just being out of line, disrespectful, rude. There's an etiquette and there's a protocol that is implicit in online communication. And that particular protocol, etiquette, whether it be explicit or implied, usually doesn't translate itself into the three-dimensional reality. So there are things that people will say and attempt and try to do online that they would never do face-to-face. And for those living a higher culture, we look for congruency in all of our relationships, whether we're on the job, we're at home, it's with our neighbors. We want who and what we are to be respected across the board. No one wants to have to tuck in, their sacred beads and, stand a certain way and or take the head covering off, or whatever it is that you feel may represent your culture and who and where and what you are. Because then what happens is you start to slip into a falsification of consciousness. And, of course, I'm ruminating on Baba Amos Wilson's work, The Falsification of African Consciousness. Excellent book to read. If any of you don't have, that's a book that should pretty much just be on your shelf. I would say every book by Amos Wilson, because he's one of those. There's very few people, if you guys have probably noticed this, I don't co-sign too many people in the quote-unquote conscious arena. I'm not going to speak against people, but some have noticed that. It's been brought to my attention before. Like, I noticed you don't really recommend to many people. And the falsification is real. Honestly, the falsification is real. And like I said, sometimes even my own personal inner dialogue, when I see certain things or certain people, and I just say, come on, you guys don't see this? Like, you really don't see this? And it's not my place, nor is it my personal crusade to extract or get people to divest their belief or faith that they have in certain quote unquote leaders. But certainly I'm not going to lead my people into the slaughter. We're moving into something different than more foolishness and more politricks. Because that's what a lot of the conscious community is, politricks. Creating this theocracy where you believe in someone, or you like them. If you like how they look, you like how they dress, you like how they represent their family. They learn to pacify and stroke the demonic ego that exists within so many adherents. And because of that, the crisis that currently exists, they remain. There's a state of ignorance that stays in place. But, those social misunderstandings and that blind obedience to social leaders and the blind obedience or the blind belief in deities and what these different systems represent is a part of the gambit that we all have to travel through to be refined to our greatest and strongest psychological understanding. So that's always to be respected and to be, appreciated, because that's how you bring the greatest of us all out. You have to send us through the gauntlet. And this society can certainly be the gauntlet. But, really quick a quick note on culture. I've shared it before, but some things sometimes they're good to keep drilling in. And I'll really kind of reference, I'm actually looking to see if I have a copy, but I don't think so. I don't even keep copies of my own books. It's not good. I have to start reading my own work a little bit more, especially because, like I said, sometimes people will reference a book and I'm lost, really. I say, oh, it's good when you wrote this part or that part, and I'm like, yeah, it sounds good. Sounds interesting, but I don't really remember a lot of times the works as well as people might think, because it's really just, it's an outpouring. When I'm writing, it's not like I have mounds of notes and I have on my whiteboard, I'm going to go this direction and go that direction. It's not really a thing like that when I'm writing, because most of the time, whatever it is that I'm speaking about, I've been playing around with it for a long time in my head. So in that sense, it allows me to move a little quicker, in terms of when I'm writing, but it doesn't necessarily facilitate me memorizing things word for word, because it's more like textures and colors that I'm offering, through literature. It's not so much the literal word. It's never really so much that, believe it or not. It's about really creating a tapestry of thoughts, which lead to a deeper and more important, tapestry of thought, So yeah, but anyway, I was speaking about culture, and actually, as I was talking, I was looking. I'm going to read just a little segment from Solutions for Dysfunctional Family Relationships. And this version may be slightly different than what some of you own, because I have an old copy back when it was still called Suicidal Family. So from when I changed the title, and I think I changed the cover too, from Suicidal Family to Solutions for Dysfunctional Family Relationships. I did do some internal edits. But culture, this is dealing with the culture chapter. Culture is what you think about yourself. No, I say control what you think about yourself, and you will control what you do about yourself. Culture is from the Latin colere, meaning to cultivate. Culture is the all-encompassing self-regenerating organism that defines a society's way of operating in the physical and spiritual world. Culture, or the developmental element, defines spirituality of a society, logic, tradition, societal norms, perspective, objectives, economics, politics, education, art, values, language, and disposition of a people. Culture also holds its own built-in defense mechanisms. Cultural indoctrination is the anticipated end result of religious, educational, political institutions, and organizations of sports and entertainment. Through these various channels, one can begin to contour the functional or dysfunctional mind of a people for various purposes. In the case of children, through the use of mythology, fairy tales, collective norms of disciplining, and media, the developing mind of a child is shaped and formed. There are indelible impressions that stain the cerebral of us all in our youth that, if needed to, can take an entire lifetime to remove from the imprinted mind. The impact of what we ingest and accept as fact or truth is typically the reference we use to pilot our lives for our entire life cycle. Without fully understanding the origins of our own cultural mind, we fly on autopilot with hopes of reaching our life's destination. Note, if you do not assert a culture for yourself, one will be chosen for you. So, I just wanted to share that definition. And again, it might be slightly different from what you have. I have even my notes and stuff written on the side. This is an edited version, so it might be a little different. But I wanted to share that definition of culture because, when I speak about living the culture, I want to be very clear on what it is that I'm referring to. As you see, it is all-encompassing. Culture is the container that the movements of your reality sit inside of. Okay, and your culture is how you cultivate, or really educate, but how you cultivate the greatest and highest ideas of each function of your society or each function of your world. Your culture is your tool. Okay, so some cultures will suppress your highest ideas, and some cultures will expand them, and allow them to bloom and to blossom and to grow in front of you. So, of course, obviously, we want to choose and live cultures that cause the mind to bloom, cause the psychology to go to its greatest depths, and functioning under a delusion that culture is an addition to, an addendum, or a supplementary life activity is dangerous, because there's already a culture in place. So as soon as you look at, let's say your indigenous culture is what you do on the strong ends. I go to a drum circle, or I do ayahuasca, or I go to an ile, I do bembes, or whatever it is, then in truth, that determines the estimation of the value that you've put on your truth. Because if you've determined that living indigenous culture and tapping into the deeper knowings and the unseen aspects of the world is one of the greatest things that one can do, but you regulate it and marginalize it to a supplementary activity in your life, then you've now just put out a proclamation to the universe that you do not value truth. Okay? You don't value truth. So now what happens later, in life? How does this really express itself? Well, it expresses itself by you always living under a shroud of delusion, and you not being able to separate the illusion from the light. That's very dangerous. There's sacred Odu that speaks on that. I won't get into the Odu right now, but it speaks about our ability to see the illusion that exists within the light. You see? So, because a lot of times when we look at light, we say, okay, well, once the light is here, we get to see the truth. We get to see what is, but there are different variations of light. Not all light is created equal, just like there are different variations of knowledge. So that also lets you know that there are different variations of culture. Not all cultures are created equal. It's almost as ludicrous as sometimes, there is a truth to it, but it's more untrue than true. Sometimes you hear people say things like, well, all roads lead, like all religions, there's but one God, and all religions lead you to the same place. But that's not true. There is a value. Again, religion is religare, which means to reread, like reading a book, to reread, or to bind back. So certain religions will bind you back. They don't necessarily bind you back to the source of your creation. They may bind you to someone else's creation. They may bind you to a falsification of creation, or a falsification of an ideology or of a social practice. And you may not realize that for 20, 30, 40 years that I've been connected and bound back to a false deity or a false culture. I've said in many other shows that culture, in fact, are the gods. Okay, so like when you're being told in so many different mythologies and scriptures, it talks about the worship of foreign gods. That's the worship of foreign culture, because your culture often is what shapes your consciousness. It gives you the ideology that shapes your consciousness, because your consciousness is really how you interpret things and the meanings that you put on things. So it's your meanings and your interpretations of that a person holds. And your culture helps to create that framework, because one of the things that culture gives you is your language. And your language frames your perceptual reality. You see, so you see how the control that culture has, you see, and it's not a bad thing, but some can lead you to a systematically cultivated experience where your higher mind is cultivated, and some can lead you to a more narrowing, isolating, falsifying, individualistic epistemology that really has dire consequences in terms of your growth and your freedom and your empowerment and your ability to live a social life. You see that now often with people have really lost the ability to socialize. You see, they've lost the ability to just relate to one another on an organic level. Their consciousness has been oppressed, and it's transformed their social reality. You see, so it's really important that the culture that we pick is a good one, but we do consciously pick one. We do consciously pick one. When we come to the age of reason, we can pick the culture that brings out the greatest ideologies, and with the culture that creates the education for us, that recapitulates and reinforces our advanced educational psychology, and that reinforces the social control that we need in order to create kingdoms and empires again. You see? So I wanted to spend a little bit of time in this first segment identifying not just culture, but the value of it. The vital information that is covered in culture. And the dangers of distorting it or covering it or hiding it or purposely displacing your culture, because of some notion or some feeling of corporate oppression, or some group persecution that comes because you haven't disguised or you haven't softened your cultural investments, and that's a form of the falsification of consciousness. But through that, it creates a psychological dissonance. And like I said, you're sending a message out to the universe as to where your estimation and the value is that you've placed on the truth. Like in the movie where you hear Jack Nicholson say, you can't handle the truth. It kind of takes you to that. You're letting the universe know that you can't handle the truth because truth is a moving and living organism. It is the root. It is the grand or great grandmother of all religion. It's truth. You see, and the great grandfather of all religion is energy. You see, so when you combine truth and energy, you get an active and living culture. You get one that's living out the culture. You get an active and living cultivation. You see, you're digging to see what the ground will produce, or to see what the fertile mind will produce, what it has inside of it. But you have to dig and till and cut over. Just think of farming in the same way. You see. And some cultivation methods are better than others. Some are like just pouring salt water onto your crops. You're going to just kill everything. Nothing will grow. Like Robert Nesta Marley sang a song, every time I have a seed, he kills it before it grows. You see, because some of those cultures, that is the imperative. So it's very important to be able to identify the critical and important value of culture, and the critical and important value, of course, of living said culture. And of course, this is the first segment, and I'm going to get deeper into it. We have more segments this month to go through in regards to that, in regards to really dealing with the culture and what culture is, right? Also, this Sunday, or today, is the first day for our men's call, so we'll be having that at 1 p.m. I believe. I could find my note on that, but that will be at I think around 1 p.m. But for anyone interested in that, you have to be a part of the ministry, as I've said. So it's not open to the general public, but to be a part of the ministry, you just fill out the membership form. That's all. There's no membership dues. I don't bombard people with newsletters. People don't read them anyway, so I don't go crazy because email is becoming, it's like the fax machine is really becoming a thing of the past. But we keep the newsletters going because it's still good to have in place. But we hardly send out newsletters, as you know. At best, we send one once a month. At best. Sometimes we'll go 2-3 months without a newsletter. And partly that's because of me. I don't like newsletters. After a while can feel a little spammy. So I go light with the newsletters. I know some ministries, they'll send you something like every month, or not every month, but like every strong or every couple of days or something like that. And I guess if you have a zeal enough, for the ministry itself, then maybe that's what you would do. But each ministry has its own style, and our new ministry is about really creating a zeal for the culture, a zeal for the movement, a zeal for the reclamation, a zeal for the reforming, a zeal for being healthy again, but not so much a zeal for just the quote unquote temple. If you have that, that's great. And it's beautiful when I hear it. Sometimes I hear people that I speak to them and they're very committed And I love when I hear that too. I love when I speak to people and they're like, yeah, I love what you're doing. I see it. And this is where I want to be. I love this. I want to be a part of this. And, that's great too. And it's not great. I'm not saying because it's a pat on the back for me. I love it when people feel that they found a home, because I know how treacherous it can be out here. And I know how isolating it can feel when you're studying and you're learning and you don't really know where to channel it, how to channel it. You don't have anyone to talk to about it. And then you start to kind of go a little off the rocker, because you don't know how much of this is really me just rebelling against what someone has given me. How much of it is just me not having a gripping control over my life and my mind, and then how much of it is real, how much of it is really something good that I'm learning here. And that's why I do encourage, I'm always encouraging it, the student and listener feedback. It's not for me, it's good because I get to hear like what works, what doesn't work for people, but it's more so for the students, for them to be encouraged. And on that note, I'm going to reiterate something about etiquette that I shared with the women's group, and I'll share it with you all. And I know that when we start to speak about etiquette, for many people, it's like, here we go again with the protocol and etiquette and so forth. But our manners are what help to define and outline how we not only perceive each other, but how we're perceived by the world. And in fact, this Tuesday's community show, Sister Kim shared an incident that happened, a minor incident, I would say, but I used it as a learning or teaching moment that happened on my Instagram feed with an individual. And, to this individual's credit, I would say to a degree, what she did was not unique. There's a common thing that occurs often, especially throughout social media and not just social media, but in society, but definitely social media, where there is this immediate and commencing disrespect that's shown towards individuals in the melanin dominant community by other individuals in the melanin dominant community. Now, me as a man, I'm speaking from my perspective first. As a man, often, regardless of what's achieved, unless you show a strong investment in the Eurocentric Western paradigm, you consider to be less than, no matter how intelligent you are. So, as an educator, teacher, or priest, you have to have a PhD in your initials to be respected, or call yourself Dr. So-and-so, and then you won't get debated and argued against as much. But again, this is a part of the inherent sickness. Where is the immediate respect just for your counterpart? The immediate respect for a community worker, the immediate respect for a man who's putting himself out there for critique and to be damaged. How many, and I'm not bragging on myself. I don't want it to come off that way, but sometimes, sadly, you have to give background, and I don't really like doing that. Like, especially any of you have ever heard me in a workshop or teach, I never really do an introduction. Or if I do, it's really quick. Like, it'll be like, okay, I'm Chief Yuya. I want to know more. Go online. Look me up. Because sometimes it's hard to sit there and talk about yourself. But when you've been doing it for so long, you don't really know what points to hit sometimes. Like, you don't know what are the important things. Sometimes in introductions, people are more interested in the fact that I've taught alternative building. They want to hear more, or I had a farm, or that I, have institutions on the continent, or that I'm a priest, whatever point it is, or that I started a school. They, you don't really know. And that's where publicists come in. They let you know, well, this is what people want to hear. This is what's important. And currently I do not have a publicist or a PR person. Okay. So with that, sometimes trying to be down to earth or let people know that you are down to earth, it backfires. Because there's, again, that inherent sickness that causes an immediate disrespect for melanin dominant men. And there's a sickness and a venom that's been implanted in melanin dominant men, or males, let me say, and melanin dominant females alike. Okay, so there's an immediate drive towards undermining. And that was addressed, and I know Sister Kim is going to do a follow-up video as well on her Serious Bitch channel. All right, and for those of you who are offended by that serious bitch, because you probably couldn't imagine, how could someone has said that, why would she call herself a bitch? You know, it's time to learn. And she actually has an instructional on that in her channel, you know, what the bitch actually is. You know, these are, again, divine terms. You know, you got to understand, and hopefully, and this is a part of what I'm saying here, what this society gives you are things and elements that drive you away from your power. So whatever they say to do is usually going to hurt you. Whatever they say don't do is usually going to help you. 9 times out of 10. You know, you even look at the whole sex, drugs, and rock and roll culture. It was promoted until the children of those promoting it, you know, became victims of it. Now it's say no to drugs. But we're still going to make money in the back end on it. You know, that's the elements of Western politics. Say one thing, do another. But the point is that I'm making is that in order for us to really build and to have something healthy, and I'm not even just saying, because not everyone's here for the deeper levels of nation building. I get that. It's fine. It's no problem at all. Because many of you are welcome. Now, our new works, you know, with the concentric ring model, not all of you are coming into the inner sanctums, you know, but certainly there's something that reverberates and ripples out for everyone. Even if you place yourself at the total outer ring and say, I just want to listen to the shows. I don't want to participate or call in or give any offerings or anything like that, then that's fine too. You know, we got free stuff for you. You know, you can enjoy and participate, and you can even come to the retreats if you feel like it. But you know, there's something for everyone, and there's no expectations that we put on people other than respect. And that seems to be the hardest one for individuals to follow through with. And I have to tell you, as a man, I don't allow anyone to disrespect me. And of course, as a man, it's not always been the popular choice. You know, I've been in some really unpleasant situations because of my stance on that and not allowing whomever, I don't care if it's policy enforcement officers or if it's a child or if it's an adult or a parent, or I'm not going for it. You know, now granted, my greatest solution for that is I keep away from disrespectful people. However, when you are the face, in many senses, of a movement and you're sharing information publicly, sometimes people immediately equate you on a level with everyone else, or they equate you on the level with themselves, or they put you beneath themselves because they say, well, if you're serving me by giving me information, then I'm above you. And I don't see it that way. I really don't. If an individual puts in the work to really heal and work with their community and puts themselves on the line and earns and is merited not only through lineage, through spiritual lineage, through cultural lineage, and just through putting in work, they're above you. You see? So I wouldn't stand in front of Ashra Kwesi and correct him. That would be so inappropriate. This man is an elder to me, and he's been putting in work longer than me, and he's got a greater body of work than I do. Ashra Kwesi. Phone going off. And there are many others that I could name, and I could say, yeah, I got to call him Marlimu Baruti, who I've cited in one of my books, you know, respected elder of mine, and who I refer to as Baba when we speak. You know, now many of you call me Baba. Well, that's who I call Baba. Now, is he a Yoruba priest, and does he do all the stuff I do or talk about all the stuff I talk about? No, he doesn't. Can I go deeper than him in certain subjects? Absolutely. But I'm not smarter than him. Yeah, I'm not smarter than Maluma Baruti. And the things that he's done are amazing, and his angles and his approaches and his insight, and he's older than me, you know. So that's I don't know, I was about to say that's the big homie, but that's the elder, that's the big elder, okay? So there's an inherent respect, but even if he was none of that, he's a melanin dominant man. So now there's a certain protocol that kicks in there, just like with his wife in Iya. When I speak to her, there's a protocol that speaks in with Iya, you know, how I deal with Mama in Iya. So it's the same thing across the board. You know, there's got to be some better protocol, man. And the same thing with the women. I know we talk about a lot in a lot of these shows how melanin dominant women have become so entrenched and saturated in Willie Lynchism and a desire to stomp out and destroy melanin dominant men. But, you know, don't be like Adam of the Bible and say to God, hey, the woman that you gave me the apple and I ate it. Don't be like that. You know, let's not discount the decades of deplorist music that we pumped into the ears of our sisters and had nothing positive to say about them whatsoever. Or if we did say something positive in one song, we'd rip them apart in the next. Or the film and movies, you know, or the way some of us treated them. You know, like, don't forget that part. You know, you don't, and that's like the feminist movement, where they just want to replace the oppressor. Okay, we're tired of our men oppressing us, so now we're going to oppress them. You know, you don't want to fall into that trap. There has been damage done on both sides. Now, the problem is some are open to hearing that and working on it, and others are insane and don't want to hear it at all. They couldn't believe that they've actually done anything wrong whatsoever. And the profundity of that, of course, is on the side of the women. There's more insanity, and the men are more crazy. And a crazy person, you could say, man, you crazy. And they'll say, yeah, I know, man, I gotta get it together. And sane person, you say, you're crazy. I ain't crazy, you crazy. Nothing wrong with me. And that's really what's been going on. But you have it on the male side as well. And you can see that in a lot of the YouTube videos, you know, where guys are just, yeah, and these women got to this, and these women got to that, and those women ain't got to do anything because you don't have the power to make that happen. Why would they just have to bow down to you? And especially for a lot of you men who feel like you want to go foreign and get these foreign brides, what do you have to offer aside from a visa and a couple of bucks? Just because the exchange rate is better in their country, but in your own country, you're still a pauper. You don't deserve a woman. I'm gonna say something else. You know, so it's just something that needs to be addressed because, like I told you, 2017 is going to be a bit more harsh because it's really time out for the nonsense. You know, you're dealing with a population of males who are so soft and really just have no direction, no guidance. So many are still 35, 40, 50 years old, still being led around by the genitals, you know, and complaining and whining that their women don't listen to them or won't let them get a second wife or whatever. You're lucky you got one. You're lucky you haven't been left, because some of you, I tell you, years ago when I ran a program, I remember in Newark, we used to build, I ran a GED program, and it was also ESL program as well. It was both. We did ESL in the evening, but 2 weeks, the way it worked is 2 strongs, they would be in the classroom, and then the other 2 strongs, we would be rehabbing homes that were in the Newark area, you know, like gutting them out, doing them over. So I was teaching construction as well. And a lot of the young ladies, and people, if anyone knows anything about Newark, New Jersey, it is what I call a bid town. You know, certain towns are bid towns, like, you know, where I spent a lot of time coming up in Mount Vernon, New York is a bid town. And a bid town is a town where pretty much everyone has been in jail. Like all the young people by 19, 20, you've done a bid. Even if it's a skin bid, you might have just did a couple months, 3 months in the county or something like that. But everyone's did a bid. Newark is one of those type of towns. This is a bid town. A lot of blood and Crip activity still, and a lot of other different gang activity, and definitely a bid town. But a lot of the young ladies who were in my program, they were claiming to be lesbians or bi, which to me is the same thing, but again, I'm not an authority in that culture, so I won't go too far on it. But I remember one day at one of our rites of passage experiences, I was led by Spirit to speak on that. And I told them, they weren't really expecting this, but I said, I don't blame a lot of you for turning to each other. It makes sense to me because the guys are so soft and they're darn near worthless. You might as well be with a girl. Because if you're with the guy, you with a girl anyway. The only difference is you with a girl who's stronger. So when you two argue, he's going to knock you through a wall. At least the girl you might have a chance with, a fighting chance. And I mean, I'm simplifying it, but there is something to that. When you're not able to really show the value and express the value in your gender assignment, then, you cease to really be perceived at that value and that estimation. So people start to do things that they wouldn't maybe have normally have done had the glory of your femininity or the glory of your masculinity be clearly demonstrated and evident to the world. So that's one of the problems with the males. And then with the females, it's the inability to be corrected. No one can say anything to a lot of these women. You see it on the shows all the time. They call, I say, hold a minute, wait a minute. Da-da-da. You calling me for guidance. I give you the guidance, and then you telling me I don't know what I'm talking about. Like, no one's really hearing how insane that is. I mean, a lot of the men hear it. Some of the females hear it. But by and large, it's kind of ignored. Whenever a man comes with balanced and clear reasoning, he's either told that he's not listening, he doesn't understand, he hates women, he's chauvinistic, he's misogynistic. And these are really just, this is game being played. You're emotionally bullying people to try to avoid being critiqued. And the primary responsibility of the man is to keep his family straight. Is to instruct and to guide and to lead and to see when someone's going off the path or whatever. And that's one of the main things that he's kept from doing. So a lot of the young men have brought this problem to me, especially as it pertains to melanin dominant women. You can't talk to them. You can't say anything. As soon as you say something, they tell you, I don't do anything right. They start playing the victim thing and all of that. And, most of the time my advice is just leave them alone. Find one who will listen. Don't because you could spend decades trying to get through the hard-headed skull of someone who isn't even worth it. Find a better woman. There are melanin dominant women all over the place, all over the world. You don't just have to deal with the ones in America. There's ones in South America. There's ones in Africa. There's ones in Asia. There's ones in Australia. There's ones in Europe. They're all over the place. And I know those are unpopular subjects, but I'm just giving an example of some of the etiquette, some of the lines that have really been crossed. So like when a man speaks, you don't get on his thread or whatever and start correcting him. You be quiet. That's what you do. When a chief speaks, you just listen. The only person who can speak to a chief and a chief would have to debate with is an elder who's been marked and documented as an elder in his community. Okay. Now, if I, as a chief, am sharing information on my channel, then that's my community. If I'm on someone else's channel, if you listen to some of the shows I've been on shows and people have called in and disagreed or whatever, I just say, okay, I'm not gonna argue with you because, I'm out of my jurisdiction. So I respect that when I'm in someone else's environment. But there's certain etiquette that has really gone amiss in our community, and whenever you bring it up and say, wait a minute, that's not appropriate, more so as a man, women are allowed to correct men, but men can't correct women, and that's retarded. I got to use that word. That is absolutely retarded. You can critique black men all day, every day. No one says that you hate black men. As soon as you critique a black woman, it's the first thing you're told. You're either gay or you hate black women, or both. So I've pretty much reached the end of my rope with that. I've tolerated it for a very long time, only for the purposes of teaching. Because as a teacher, sometimes you got to tolerate certain things just to kind of get the lesson out. Now I'm at a place where I don't care as much, and I only really want to work with those who have sense. And so in 2017, we're going to put more emphasis and focus on what our new culture really is. And we're going to do that in this month as well, but really that will help people to understand what's appropriate from what's not appropriate. Like when people call and say, hey, Chief, I got this problem, and I give the problem and they keep talking, or they say, yeah, I kind of agree with that because such and such, but that, shut up. I got to use that language. I mean, I speak much more harsh than that. I'm being nice, but I don't care what you kind of agree with or believe or don't. I don't care. If you were my equal, I would let you know, and then we could have a discussion about it. But if you were my equal, you would have my own personal phone number, and we would be talking about it privately. You wouldn't be calling my self-help show and speaking to me or my students. Aside from that, and I know all of this sounds arrogant because we've been wrapped up in such a backwards culture for so long. We talk about the pride of royalty and the pride of we were kings and queens and all that, but it's just words. It's a falsification again, because when that's confronted, when those ideas are confronted, if you call me chief or I call you empress or this or that, or because I don't like to use the word queen too much unless you really are a whore. If you're a whore, I'll call you queen because that's what the word means, but if you're not a whore, then you shouldn't be trying to get that title, because that's a revered title, but I might say empress or whatever, other terms of feminine adoration. But I mean it through and through. Just like if I call you brother or I call you sister, I mean that through and through. It's not just a nickname. So I'm really going to be making sure that I create the lines of delineation in the coming month and year, so that way those who are not about this culture will either get about it or they'll leave, go somewhere else and do that stuff somewhere else, because that's a part of the sickness that's got our community so messed up. And I knew as a community rearing effort, so those same sicknesses are not going to be allowed in this space, regardless of how you feel about it, regardless of how many people high five you about it. I could care less. I know right from wrong, and some of you also do know right from wrong. And for those of us who know, we have a responsibility to live that culture, to model it for other people, and understand that it's not going to be a popular decision. It's not, you're going to get unfollows and blocks, and people are going to curse you out and give you the middle finger and all of that. And it might be that girl that you thought was cute and you wanted to talk to. She's going to be the one who stops talking to you. Or it might be the guy who was flirting with you. Now all of a sudden he doesn't want to talk to you, whatever. Sometimes that's the sacrifice that you have to make to do something that's groundbreaking. So I'm just telling you now, for instance, if I do a call-in show and I give some guidance and you start bucking back, I'm hanging up the phone on you. That's even if I do a call-in show and let you talk to me anymore, because it's getting too ridiculous. If I post something on social media and you start riffing, I'm just going to delete you and block you. We're going to just roll like that going forward, because too many of you are too hard-headed. The information is just not sinking in. This is not the place for you. And we've been trying to show you and teach you and teach you and teach you and teach you, and you're purposely not getting it because you like things the way they are. All right. So I just wanted to share that, in terms of like what we need to do as a group and as a collective, and it's not just because I'm annoyed or anything like that. Sometimes I let things run their course because it's what you have to do sometimes as being a teacher and a leader. You have to kind of sacrifice certain things. Sometimes you might sacrifice a little bit of your peace, or maybe even a little bit of your dignity. You got to sacrifice it, and it might be for a time. You might have to do something for 3 years or for 2 years or for 4 years just to kind of get the word out. So like one of the things I do, the live broadcast, like what you're hearing now, something I never wanted to do in all my years of doing work. Never wanted to do this, but years ago, I think in 02, 03, I got a radio show, FM show. Then I had 2 shows. I was syndicated. I had one in DC and then one in the New York area. That was before internet radio. And then I got internet show and podcast and all that. But I just had to sacrifice what I didn't want to get the message out. So it's the same thing with these segments. But I'm coming to a place now where, again, we're 600 shows in. The information is out there now. Like I've done it. I've done what I've promised. So at this point, like I said, in 2017, there's a lot that I won't be tolerating anymore. And that's to give a model to all of you who want to live a better culture, who want to live a better life, who want to live a more fulfilled life, who want to live a happier life, and who want the dignity of a culture. It's embarrassing when you're around people who have their cultural investments, speak another language. They have that sense of togetherness just because they have their own language. And you're just kind of left on the outskirts with nothing, and you're dibbling and dabbling, and you may know a word here or there, or you may do your own little thing or whatever, or you're an isolated witch. That's another term. That's people call that a form of magic, isolation magic. It's no such thing. That's people who basically, they're into occultism, but they don't have any friends. They call it isolated witchery. But it's embarrassing to know all of this Africa, to know all of this indigenous spirituality, and still not have a culture at the end of the day. That's what people can say, and I'm not a Nuwapian. Never have been, never had a desire to be. But you gotta, learn to tip your hat off to people. And Dr. Malachi Z. York, that was something that he was able to establish for his people. A culture, a language, a way of doing things, a way of looking at things, and a sense of togetherness and unity. So even with him doing 200 plus years now in the pen, you still have people who are still repping Nuwapu very strong, because it's a culture. There's a value to that. And wherever they go, they can say, I'm Nuwapu. You see? So, or Nuwapian, excuse me. So that's what I mean, that starts by setting some boundaries. And there's gonna be people who have no culture who are gonna rail against that and feel offended. But I have to tell you, for me, they matter little. What matters more to me is those of you who are trying to get this and are trying to learn and want something better for your children, want something better for your family, and are tired of being on the outskirts of world culture. You don't want to claim American, you don't want to claim Western, but you can't really claim Yoruba or Khan or Kemetic, or Sangoma. You can't, but you need your own. And we have it here. We have it here in our new. And that's going to require that we respect one another and that we be respected above and all. We respect each other and that we be respected. So I tried to be very cool in the beginning with, just call me Yuya, don't worry about this and that. And people took advantage of that and they got stupid. So I had to start using at least one part of my title, Chief. Because my name is actually pretty long, my Nigerian name. I just don't really use it. But if you heard it, you'd be like, oh. It's the way my name was received, it's actually inherited. So my name is a long line of that same name, my Yorubic name, because of the lineage that I was granted into. Long story. But in any event, I want to see you as a divine. I want to respect you. I really do. And I will accept no less for myself. So just keep that in mind going forward. Those of you who are calling in and lingering around and laughing and giggling and not really respecting what this experience is, you are soon to be put through, a gauntlet, and you will have to make a decision. And for those of you who are really ready to jump in and live a more fulfilled and joyous life, this is our time now. This is our time. There's a season for some very basic teaching, which I've done over the past 5 or 6 years, starting with the Orisha sciences, and we've covered so much. And now we're going to get into some heavier things, and a lot of people are going to drop off. And a lot of people who have been begging and yearning for something real are going to come on. You'll see. I've done this before. I know how this process goes. All right. So it's going to be a beautiful thing. Just trust me. I've seen this at work before. It's going to be a really good thing. All right. But that has been our segment. And again, I want to remind you all that every Tuesday and Thursday between 1 p.m. and 3 p.m. Eastern, we do community radio. And for anyone who'd be interested in co-hosting community radio, please reach out to us. You can get us at questions@ournewnation.org. questions@ournewnation.org. Because starting probably January of 2017, we're going to be doing community every Monday through Friday, every day. But what we'd like to do is, because it's been really good for people. I've noticed that, like, people call in regularly and stuff like that. People have been getting a lot out of community. So, I want to give them more. But, I would like to bring in some other people to help out with that show. So if any of you have an interest in participating, and it may not be 1 to 3 every day. I would be interested in doing like a dawning drive type thing, or like an after work thing, whatever. We'll see how it goes though. But certainly if any of you who would like to contribute to that, please, let us know. Also, starting in January, we're going to be doing around January, February, our new spiritual training phase 1 challenge, and really trying to get that phase done before June of 2017 for those of you who are kind of lagging behind and whatnot. Because to really fully participate on any one of the ministries, you do have to complete at least phase 1 at minimal. All right. So just as a heads up. But I want to do like a cohort, a group, where we can all kind of go through and help each other, get through phase 1 of the training. All right. Even if you go back and do it again after that, which is typical. Don't worry about that. But at least so that way you can, be more acquainted with what we're doing. All right, so I just want to remind everyone about that. And, of course, you have the women's call every Monday at 8 o'clock. You can definitely get on that. All of you female Anubians. And for you male Anubians, we'll be doing the men's call once a month, which I have a feeling we're going to probably end up doing once a strong or something. It's going to increase in frequency, but we'll start it at once a month for now, because guys are different than women. Women like the camaraderie and not the camaraderie, most of the communing. Guys really enjoy the camaraderie, but they don't need to commune as much. And when they do commune more often, they start to get funny. They start to drift, and guys are funny style like that. Women really look forward to like really fellowshipping in a different kind of way than guys do. So, but I think that will change a bit going forward. All right, so everyone, I look forward to speaking to you soon. Community radio, and also next Sunday we'll be digging more into living the culture. And this has been Chief Yuya, in another segment of Chief Speaks. Until such time.